Hi guys, I hope you can see me okay. If you can just give me a little comment on the right hand side there, it'll just let me know that the streaming software and the sound and everything is working okay. I can see that there's 15 people on at the moment, so if you can just put a little comment to say that you can hear me and everything's working fine. Brilliant, thanks for that, Beardy. Okay, so how's this going to work? I know it's difficult times for us all, really. So we've been locked up in the house now, no fishing, and I've been doing an awful lot of fly tying. Now, I have been doing some other various bits and bobs with my YouTube channel, but I thought it'd be quite nice to do a private session for the club. So I approached Salisbury District and they've allowed me to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie some early season dry flies for you, and what you see in the vise is going to be the first fly, and I know it looks like a hot mess, but it's actually very effective early doors in the season, usually in March actually, but I don't think we're going to get any river fishing done in March, or any fishing for that matter. But it's called a jingler, and it's my sort of variation of it. If you've got any questions, please type them in at the side, and occasionally I'll stop and have a look. So I need to wear these. I can't tie without them really now, because my eyes are on the blink. So I'm just going to slip these on, and I'll take this out of the vise. Slip in a fresh hook. And just make sure it's locked into place there. Now, the hook I've put in the vise actually is a Hanak H130. It's a barbless hook, and it's a purpose dry fly hook. It's in black nickel, and it's on a fine wire. And the thread I'm going to be using is from Simplify, and this is the Nano Silk, and it's in 12/0. Now, for any of the Nano Silks, Vivas, any of the rest, I always use a little touch of super glue on the shank of the hook. Now, a lot of people don't like this, they prefer wax, but with these new silks, the wax isn't enough, it's too slippy. So I'm just going to use my thread to spread the glue up the shank, and then I'm going to use my rat's tail just to get a bed of thread down. And I'm going to bring it approximately to where a barb would be on a barbed hook. I can come in with my snips and just remove my waste. Now, it's, as you've seen from the original image, it's a big fly, and mostly I put big hooks in the vise when I'm doing this sort of thing, so that people can see better, and it's for demonstration purposes really. But on this occasion, the jingler is a massive fly, and this is probably the smallest I would tie it for fishing. I'm just looking for this. I'm going to use this for my tailing fibre, and what it is, if you're interested, is some Coq de Leon, and it's from Troutline, and it's a nice brown shade. The Coq de Leon's a lovely fine feather, and it makes great tailing. I'm going to take between 6 and 10 fibres. I want a fairly thick bushy tail. As I say, it's a meaty fly, and I want it approximately twice the length of the hook shank. So I'm going to catch that in. A couple of loose turns just to hold it into place. That looks okay. Then I can tidy all that up. Don't need to worry about cutting the waste end away. And I'll just bring my thread up to around the thorax area. So that's looking pretty good. Next then, I'm going to add in my first rib, and what that is some of this stuff. It's from Troutline. It's actually designed for making perdigon nymphs, but I find it really nice on this pattern. It's very delicate and it needs a bit of protection, and I'll come on to that part in just a moment. So I'm going to catch that in first of all on my side, a couple of turns, and I'll just leave that line at the side. The next thing, of course, is the protection for that, and it's going to be some of this. It's fish on gold wire. As you can see, it's 0.14 millimeters thick, and I've got a little bit that I've been working with here, and again I'm going to catch that in just where I caught my gold in, and then bring all my tying thread back down to the bottom here. Okay, so far so good. Now, jinglers up north are tied with various different kinds of bodies, but what I'm going to be using today is it's a custom blended dubbing, and it's trout stalkers, and this is I think Andrew calls this one the Bugs Life hybrid dub. He's just scribbled it on there on the back, but I've asked him to mix this dubbing up for me specifically. And if I can just, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on the big camera there, but there's lots of different little colours going on within the dubbing, and this just gives that little bit of extra life to the fly. So I'm just going to dub it on. I want it a fairly tight dub, and that's why I'm using synthetic dubbing rather than a natural. Just keeping it nice and tight. I'll start with that, and if I need any more, I've got it in my left hand. I'm going to bring it over and up my body. As you can see, it's quite thin, and that will come all the way up to there, and I want to stop just about there actually. Just take any loose fibres out the way. I'll just pop that down at the side of my vise. It can go back in the packet. Being a tight Scotsman, I don't want to waste any. Then first of all, I'm going to bring up my trout line rib, and I'm going to bring that towards me. Now, I don't know, you're probably a lot more switched on than I am, but I never remember what way I've brought ribs or thread or dubbing, so I always have to keep saying to myself, this one's towards you, this one's towards you. And then when I get up to meet my thread, I can cross over and trap that into place. A couple of turns in front of that rib, and then I can come in again with my scissors and just remove my excess, and that can go to the side for later on. Okay, so I brought that towards myself, and this one I'm going to take in the opposite direction away, and what it does is it just comes over and protects that material. Once you've got it up to meet your thread, again, a couple of turns to lock it into place, a couple of turns in front of the wire, and keeping tension on your thread, you can just twist away the wire until it parts company. And that's looking pretty good. Now, the fly does look like a hot mess, you know, there can be no questioning that it doesn't look like anything you'd probably tie on, but please believe me when I tell you that once the really cold spell's finished and the trout are coming out of their sort of hibernation, enforced hibernation, they're looking for big meals, and this can often pick out the better fish. So next I'm going to add in my first hackle, and what I'm using is some this grizzle hackle. I've already selected a feather here, and I want it to be quite a big feather. So here it is. Now with hackles you can see they bend a certain way, so this one's going that way, and often when you're tying wet flies you would want the bend to be going backwards, but with this dry I want the bend to be going the other way. So I'm just going to strip quite a bit up the feather, and what I've done there is I've left myself quite a bit to tie in. So remember, I want to have the bend coming towards the eye of the hook. I'm just going to take a little bit of that away, and before I tie it in I'm going to add some wax. This just gives a better grip of the feather. So I'll catch it in. Don't run it straight up to the eye or the butt, because you need some room to finish. So I've brought that in and I've trapped it into place. Now with this I'm going to break the stem. So I'm not snapping it, I've just broken it, so it's going to be easier to work with. Next then I'm going to use some natural ginger cock cape here, and again I've already selected a feather from that, which I have here, and again I want to try and strip it to a point that I can use it. Now this is going to be what keeps the fly afloat, really, the cock hackle. Although the grizzle cape's not bad quality, it's not as good as this cock hackle, sorry. And I've again trimmed off the stalk, leaving enough to tie in, and I'm going to tie that in right beside the grizzle and then bring it up. I'm going to stop approximately 1/8 of an inch from the eye of the hook, and the first feather to come up is the ginger cock. Again I'll just give that a little bend to snap the thread, and then when I bring it round like this you can see it wants to sit properly for me. If you don't break that stem, sometimes it won't sit right. So I'm fairly happy with that. I'm going to bring it one last time round to the eye and bring my thread around to meet it. Pull everything back, and then I can come in with my snips and just remove that. Next I'm going to bring up my grizzle hackle through the same fibres, same course if you like. Beardy, it's a very generic pattern, but I suppose a daddy longlegs crane fly like attractor, I don't think it resembles anything in particular. It's more a suggestive pattern. You know, if it looks like a big meal, fish are likely to come and take it. So I'm just going to bring the grizzle hackle up through. When I was first shown this fly, actually, I just dismissed it because I looked at it and thought, oh, it doesn't look very good. You know, it's not a good looking fly, but I don't think that's the point really to this one. It's one of them things you've just got to have faith that it's going to work, and it took a long time. So it was given to me by a guy called Steve Cullen, who used to be the editor of Today's Fly Fisherman, and he said, oh, you've got to try these, and he gave me it, and I thought, oh well, maybe not, and it sat in my box for years, maybe 2 or 3 years, and there's one day I was on the military stretch of the River Avon, and There was the odd fish rising, nothing much though. It wasn't what you'd call a massive hatch, but there was a little rise going on, and I'd thrown everything in my box at it, and I thought, I might as well, you know, they'll never take this, it's far too big, it doesn't look like anything. But the fish crawled up the rod after I stuck this on, so it's been one of my early season go-to patterns since. Okay, so I'm not quite finished with it. I've got a little bit of partridge here. This is English partridge, and again I've already selected a feather from the cape, and I've stripped away all the waste down the side here. And before I do anything else, I'm going to grab my hackle pliers, and I'm just going to grab the tip, like so. Then I can gently, it's very delicate, the old partridge, slick everything back, and I've left a little tag to tie in there. So again, I want that you can see the natural bend of the feather. I want to tie that in coming forward. And I'm making a hash of it, but let's see if I can, there we go. Got that in. I'm going to pull that forward. Then I can come in and just take my tip away. Then I could, if I wanted to, use my hands to bring this round, but I much prefer to use the hackle pliers. It's just got a lot more control, and it is very gentle. And you know what I would say is, when I'm tying this up, maybe 3 or 4 times out of 10 it will snap while you're at this stage, which is it's fairly frustrating, as you can imagine. So once I've tied in 2 or 3 turns of that, I can then come in with my thread. I'm just going to try and work through them hackles. I want to keep all them scruffy partridge hackles in play, so I just want to make sure I've got it tied right in. Then I can take my hackle pliers away, lick my thumb and forefinger, sweep everything back, and then start to work on the tiniest of heads. And once I've got that tiny head, what I'm going to do is grab a little bit of UV resin. This is the Solaris Bone Dry, and then I just like to put a tiny little bit of resin on my thread. And all this does is, when I come in with my whip finish tool, just means that I've not got to try and push hackling back out the way to finish the fly. Just come in with my scissors, remove that, then I can give it a little zap with my torch. Then the next thing is to remove the remainder of the partridge, which there isn't much remaining. I've used it all, thankfully. Now, I'm not finished, so this fly, it's not meant to look pretty, so come in with your dubbing brush and I find the more you scruff this up, the more effective the fly is. And what I would do is I would treat this with some muslin and then tuck it away in my box. And that's the first fly of the evening. I hope that was of some use to you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. there is a little bit of lag when you're doing live stream, so I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okie dokie, let's move on then. You need to forgive me because I'm working in quite a confined space, and I've got various bits all around me, trying to just juggle it round so that I can get it to work. So the next fly I'm going to tie for you is this Garmon pattern, and I've tied this in with a little sighter. Now I mean, having been a member of Salisbury District for a while, I noticed that we're all of a certain age, and I really struggle to see small flies on the water, so I like to tie in little sighters that I can spot very quickly once I've cast. The high-end, what size would you usually fish it on? I would usually fish the jingler on a size 8. 8 at its biggest, 10 at its smallest. But it is a really great fly. I mean, I know it looks terrible, but some of the best flies do. Whereas this one looks lovely, and I don't catch as many fish on this as I do on that jingler. So let's get started with this one. I will just find the right hook. So what I'm using for this is a Hanak 333 barbless hook. It's on a fine wire, and it's in size 12. I'm just going to grab one out of the box. And pop it in the vise. Now, initially I'm not going to start with a tying thread. I'm going to be starting with a Glow Bright number 12. And as you can see, it's bright green. Yeah, Ian, I use a size 20 in the summer months, but early season I don't much get really smaller than 16. I think it's as big as I'll go in the spring. April, it's probably around May time I'm starting to get into the 16s down through to 20, and I've got to be honest with you, size 20 I've got to tie them onto leader the night before I go fishing, because I just can't, on the riverbank I can't see well enough anymore to be able to tie them on. So as I said, we're on the Glow Bright. I'm going to get a bed of Glow Bright starting at the top here and run that all the way down, right around the bend to the bottom. I can then come in with my scissors and snip that away. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is tie in some of this stuff. It's called a magic quill, and basically it's a transparent synthetic quill. Comes on this little card here, and you just simply peel them off. Great things, and ideal for this sort of thing. So basically it's adhesed, is that even a word? It's sticky on one side, and I want that stickiness, so I'm going to just take away that too small of a taper, and I'm going to catch that in on my side. Now I can see the Glow Bright bringing it round already, and then I'm just going to use that to come all the way back up. Now I want to create a small taper with my Glow Bright. Now I don't know how well you can see on the camera, but it's actually twisting up on me, and I want it to be flattening out. Now with these sort of flosses and threads, if you give it a little twist anti-clockwise, it just flattens the whole thing out, and you get a better body with it like that. can come back up. Every time it starts to try and spin up on me, just twist it open in order to get the effect I'm after. And I'm still not very happy with that, so I'm going to come round again. It's looking a wee bit better. Then in open turns I can come back up and finish it just at the top here. Now I'm going to switch back over to my nano silk that I used in the last tie and just get a few turns on to hold it into place, and then I can take away my rat's tail and my glow bright like so. Just trying to find somewhere to put these down. So next I'm going to bring my synthetic rib up around the body, and then you'll start to see the first turn's always the hardest with this, and then as it comes up your life gets a little bit easier. All the way up the body, and when you get up near the thorax area you can bring your thread back around and just catch that in. Once you've caught it in, just ensure it's tied down. Get a few turns in front of your rib and then take away your waist. Okay, it's pretty robust, this stuff, but what I like to do is just add a little bit of UV resin, and all this does is make the body pop really. This is an emerging pattern, so you want the body to be subsurface. And this just helps. Now I don't know how well you see when that UV light hits it, it really does light up. And I'm fairly content that that's dry. Next then, I'm going to use some deer hair, and what I've got here is some coastal deer hair, and it's been dyed picric, and I've got my little trusty deer hair stacker here. So I'm just going to take approximately just under a centimetre of deer hair. I'm just doing this off camera. You might just pick up a little bit up on the small box, but move that out of the way. I've cut out about that much, and before I put it in the stacker, which I've just dropped, apologies, they said it'll be alright on the night. Bear with me, there we go. So I've now recovered my stacker, and what you've got to do when you're working with deer hair, you've got to make sure you comb it out. There'll be a load of under fur in there, and you can see it actually coming away as I put my comb through it. So just get rid of any underfur, because it will stop the deer hair stacking. So I'm just going to put that into my stacker. Couple of taps on the table, and with any luck it's aligned my tips just perfect for me. So I'll grab hold of that. Now what I want this to do is come just off the bend of the hook. So when I dress it up, that's just about perfect. So I'm going to swap over fingers, and I'm going to now take my snips and off camera just snip that into my waste bin. So I've got it in position, ready to tie in, and before I do that I'm going to add a little wax to my silk, and this just helps to get a grip of it. So lay it on. Now when you're using these nano silks, Vivus is the same, Ultimate Tying Silk just the same, just take your time and don't come too heavy on your wraps initially, because it will just cut the deer hair. So I'm starting to pin this down now, and as I'm more confident that I've got it in position and it's not going to cut through, before I remove my fingers I'm going to just slightly put pressure on the deer hair like so. And what does that do? It just keeps it flowing back. If you pull down too tightly, what happens is you get your deer hair flaring up, and I don't want that at this point. I do want it to happen a little bit, but not at this point. So just coming in, breaking that bit at the front, keeps it nice and low. Okay, so I'm going to add in a little bit of this is Emergence dubbing. It's peacock green, and it's ideally suited for this pattern. And I'm going to take out the tiniest of bits out the packet. As you can see, it's a nice tight green. I'm just going to fan it out like so. So I've got it like that, and then I'm going to put it down to the side, because the next thing I need is a little bit of this. And what this is arrow wing. Only need the tiniest bit. It's just so that when I cast it I can immediately get eyes on it, because this really stands out on the river. So I'm just going to take a small piece of this, and catch it on with a couple of turns. It can be a bit slidey, but just persevere. Of course, if you're lucky enough to be a young person, you probably got 20/20 vision and you don't need this kind of sight aid. Once it's in position, you can trim it to whatever size. It only needs a tiny little bit. It's just a dot that you'll see on the river. Just going to lift them legs up a bit, and that's looking not too bad. Okay, so next I'm going to bring my thread up. I'm going to lift my wing and bring it onto my green body. So my thread is now sitting behind the wing. And what I'm going to do with my little bit of dubbing that I took out and fanned out earlier, I'm going to split my thread with my needle. he says. Sorry about this, folks. I'm having a bit of difficulty getting my needle into my thread. I know what you'll be thinking. You should have used a dubbing loop, but it doesn't work. A dubbing loop just bulks up too much of this, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to slip my little bit of dubbing into there. Keep tension on my thread, I don't want it to fall out. Then I can spin that up. Deer hair impossible to work with. It always explodes. Is it about the tension of the thread or the type of deer hair? I think, Chris, the deer hair quality is important. You know, you can get, you know, it's like anything really. You can buy a really cheap patch of deer hair and it'll do you fine. But if you buy some decent stuff, it's obviously going to be much easier to work with. I've been very lucky that I've picked up several patches over the years that I like. Tension's another thing with deer hair. I mean, if you regularly visit YouTube, it's definitely well worth having a look at Barry Clark, who I think he's known as the Feather Bender on YouTube, and he does some fantastic work with deer hair, and you probably learn quite a bit from that. Now, before I bring this dubbing over, I'm just going to add the tiniest bit of super glue to the front of the fly. Now what this does is keeps the dubbing in place, and it also finishes the fly off nicely. So I'm going to lift up my wing now, bring in several wraps underneath that wing, like so, and then the remainder I'm going to bring to the front. And then once that's in place, I can again come in with a whip finish tool, everything back out the way, and finish the fly off. And there's the Grammalis, emerging Grammalis. It's although we're saying early season flies, I often find this really good sort of October, November for the grayling. They absolutely love it. So that's that one. And if we've got any questions on that, I'm happy to take my helmet off actually and have a look. Nope, we all happy enough, easy enough. Okie dokie. I'm going to be running out of flies to tie if you've not got any questions, boys. Okay. Okay. Next one I'm going to tie for you is this, and this is probably, it would be referred to as a midge pattern, I suppose. So I've tied this on a 14, and this is the maximum size I would go to with this. Generally I tie these on 18s and 20s. As Ian was saying earlier, you know, these work really well in the tiny sizes, but you know, I rarely have to use them early season. But this is an all year round sort of fly, so I suppose it's as close to Jeremy Lucas's Oppo as you're going to see tonight. And let me find the bits and bobs for that. There's a hook, that's handy. So I'll pop that in the vise so I don't lose it. Don't want the dog yelping later. So I've put in a Hanak H130 barbless hook at size 14. As I said, this is probably as big as I'd go with this fly. And the thread I'm going to be using is, again, it's a nano silk. This one's a Fish On Ultimate Tying Silk, and it's kind of just an off black colour. And the first thing I'm going to do, as I did with the other pattern that I used, the nano silk, is I'm just going to get a tiny little bit of super glue onto the shank, and then catch a couple of, use the thread to spread the glue, then catch on a couple of wraps. Now I'm going to come back probably about half the length of the shank. Then I'll bring my thread back to approximately 1/8 of an inch before the eye. Then remove my waste. Now what I want to do here is create a taper with my wing, and the winging material I'm using is some Troutline Ultra Select CDC. Now what I love about this stuff is it comes all stacked nice and neat. You're not sifting through a big bulk packet of CDC. You know, it's all good feathers. And what I want for this pattern, it's size 14. I'll be looking for between 4 and 5 plumes. There's nothing worse than using CDC flies that they don't have enough CDC in them to support the weight of the fly, and you spend half your session treating the CDC rather than fishing. I really dislike that. So plenty of CDC in mine, certainly for a size 14. 4 or 5 plumes and this will float like a cork. So length of CDC, approximately the length of the shank of the hook. And then I'm going to get a couple of wraps, quite gently initially, but then really clamp down on it. Now what you see is I've got maybe a couple of millimeters of thread just holding that CDC in place, and I want to remove the back end. And I'm going to cut it at an angle like so. Now what I've got now is a taper down to the butt section of the fly. Simon, I'm not sure if that's specifically the Granum on the chalk streams around Salisbury. I use that Granum pattern all over the country. Although I'm a member of Salisbury District, I do tend to travel about a bit and fish a lot of different rivers. I fish the Eden up north, the River Don. I'm on the Welsh Dee quite a bit, and that Granum pattern seems to work fine. I would say that it's particularly good on Werwell. That's a tributary of the Test. I've had a lot of success with it there, but it's a general pattern that works well for me. Not fly related, but my favourite early season beat. I like Amesbury Beardy. I always enjoy that, and I always find myself wandering right up to the very top of the beat, where you've got to, it's a good walk, but you get a bit of peace and quiet. I try and avoid it like the plague come mayfly time, because you're stood generally shoulder to shoulder with other boys trying to fish. Excuse me. But yeah, the Amesbury beat's very good. I like that. And I also like the Stonehenge beat is one of my favourites. Okay, back to the fly then. I'm just going to now come down just nice and even, and I want to get that nice taper, and what you get is that cigar shape, which I want, which is ideal. Now I'm going to tie in a rib on this, and if I can find it, of course. And this is the silver fish on, and I did have a bit taken off the reel, but I seem to have lost that in the melee that is my fly tying bench at the moment. In fact, you'd have a laugh if you could see it actually from a wider angle. I've got my vice perched on my Black & Decker workmate with my DSLR in front here, and it must look very comical. So I've got the wire, and I'm going to catch that in, and you might notice where the pronounced hump is. I'm going to use that to just fill in the little bit of a gap I've got there. So just bring that round, and that just helps with the taper. I'm going to bring it all the way back, and the body of this fly is it's a herring feather. Now you find these up and down the bank, especially on the Amesbury beat. Actually is very good. You know, I've found several lovely herring feathers on the Amesbury beat. You know, you just have to wander up and keep your eyes open, and they make fantastic bodies. And Jeremy Lucas, when he tied his fly, the Oppo, this is what he uses. So just take off 2 or 3 fibres, and I'm going to catch the tip in, like so. I'll bring my thread up, open turns, and I'm going to stop approximately maybe 2 millimeters from where I've started my wing, and then I can grab the herring and start to bring that up the body of the fly. Now, if you were a belts and braces sort of person, you may well want to stick a little bit of super glue on the body before you bring this herring up, but I find that the wire rib gives it ample protection when you're fishing. So just get 3 turns in there to hold it into place. I'm going to get 3 turns in front of it, and then I can come in and just remove any excess I've got there. Now with my wire rib, I'm going to get the first turn onto the bare shank of the hook, and once I've done that, I can then bring that up over away from me. And as I said, this is this is as large as I would go with this pattern. It really works much better in size 18 and 20. So once you've got your wire in and you've got it trapped, keep tension on your thread, twist it away, and you've got that into place. Okay, I'm just going to have a little tidy up here. Put that to the side. And what I'm going to use for my thorax is, again, it's some trout stalker stuff, and this is a possum, and it's just the natural. It's a natural pale opossum. Again, I should have got some out the packet. You need very little of this, tiny little pinch for a fly this size. And again, I'm going to just tease it all out. Now, a lot of guys I know think I'm wasting my time with opening up my thread and taking such time on this, but I don't think you get the same. So I could dub it right onto my thread and then wrap it round and finish the fly, but I just don't think you get the same kind of finish. And it might be me just being pedantic, but I like what I like. Let's see if the thread splitting goes a wee bit easier this time. No. There we go. Got a wee bit of a loop. Then I can just feed that up into my loop, trap it in. What I like about this technique is you get that wiry, leggy, buggy look to the fly, which I don't think you get. I mean, you can dub it on and then wrap it round and then tease it out with a brush, and that works okay, but it just doesn't look the same to me. So once I've got my little brush, I'm just going to pull that out. Now I'm aware that bit's off camera, so I'm just going to lift that up so you can see a wee bit better there. So I've got it, it's quite thin. I'm going to get a couple of wraps in behind my wing, and I'm going to lift the wing up with my thumb and forefinger and just bring all that dubbing to the front. And that's looking pretty decent. Then again, I'm going to add a little bit of UV resin. Then I can come in take away my thread, and then blast it with the UV light. And there you have my sort of rendition of Jeremy Lucas's Oppo. And for midge and small, if you're not sure what's coming off actually, a size 18 of one of these is always a good safe bet for throwing at the fish if you've tried all the other things to tempt them. Why do you put the first turn on the hook shank? Chris, I do that because I often like to have some tags on my flies, especially my dries, but on this one, obviously in the smaller sizes, it's quite difficult to do that. So I like to get a turn onto the shank, and it just gives that little glint. If you imagine the fly's going to be fishing like this in the water, and as the fish comes up, the first sort of thing it's going to see after it's seen the profile is a little glint of light, and I think that little glint of light is it just gives that little bit of likeness to it, and I often find that works quite well. I hope that answers your question, pal. Do you use nano silks for all dry flies? No, not all of them, but I find myself more and more, Beardy, using nano silks for my tie-in. It's just very versatile. It's super thin, so if you've got to get a lot of turns in, it works really well, and I like that. So, but not all of them. Some of the dries need, and I've got one here that I'm going to do. In fact, I'll do one next where I'm not using the nano silk, and that might show you why I need it and when I don't need it, sort of thing. So that's the Oppo. Okay. Next one then is an imitation of a March Brown, and I hope you can see that okay in the main screen now. So this is again, it's a very early season pattern, generally before April, and it can be very effective. So I'm going to tie this next for you, and if I can find the right hook, and then try and find the pile that I put the March Brown stuff. Right, got that. Sorry, bear with me folks. There it is. I seem to have... Nah, there it is. Couldn't see it for looking. Okay, so take that out the vise. And it wasn't one of my better examples, that actually. The thorax area was a wee bit too bulky for my liking. But let's hope I get this one a bit better. So I'm going to add in the hook. Again, it's a Hanak, it's a 130 barbless hook. And again, this is at size 10. Now I tend to tie these in size 10 down to size 14. And the thread I'm going to be using is some UTC olive. And first thing I want to do is get a tiny little bit of wax on just at the end of my thread. And I'm just running my fingers through it to get as much of that off as possible. If I thought I could get away with no wax with this pattern, I would, but you do need a little bit just to give it that stickiness. Okay, so I've caught that in. I'm going to get a couple of wraps on, and then I can come in and take away my tail end. Okay, so the tailing of this fly, again, I'm using Coq de Leon, and I'll just use the feather I've been working with. I do prefer a mottled feather for this pattern, but the brown works just as well. Take about half a dozen feathers, so not as much as for the jingler, and I don't want the tail nearly as long, so about the length of the shank, and then I can catch that in, come all the way back. Then I can lift that up out the way and remove it. Now with UTC thread, I don't know how many of you use this stuff. If you twist it anti-clockwise, it'll unwind and flatten the thread out, which makes it much better for forming bodies. Now, if you noticed on the original pattern I showed you, I put up on the camera, you'll notice it's got that segmented body going on, and the way I achieve that is by using some natural hand strip quills, and the ones I use are they're called Polish quills. I'm not sure that the peacocks are Polish, but I'll show you the packet in a sec. But these are certainly the best quills that you'll find anywhere. I used to sit and strip my own, and then I found that even then I wasn't getting them as good as this, so now I just buy them. I'm just going to take away the very, very thin end there, and then catch on the tip and start to build my body. Now I'm going to run it up to around the thorax area and then start to come back. Now as I was doing that, I could see that my thread was trying to tighten up on me. So again, I'm just going to give it a little run anti-clockwise. And every time it tries it, just keep giving it that twist. And then again, I'm creating that cigar shape like the natural. And then once you've got what you need, bring your thread to the front. Now I don't often do this when I'm demonstrating, because not everybody's got access to a full rotary vise, but on this occasion I'm going to use the rotary function on my vise to complete the body. So I'm just going to grab my hackle pliers like so, and then I'm going to bring my rib up. Take your time, make sure you don't catch the point of your hook, because the stripped quill is a delicate thing and you don't really want to weaken it any further by catching the point of the hook. All the way up. And then you'll see that my thread's unravelled and come to meet my quill. So I can just catch that in with a couple of turns. I can let go of my hackle plier at this point, and a few turns to lock it into place. Now a brave man would just snap this away, but I'm feeling a wee bit cowardly tonight, so I'm just going to snip it off with my snips. Now I've closed down my tail somewhat there, but it still looks okay. Now to finish the body off, I just use a little bit of UV resin. Now if you're not a big fan of the resins, you can do these in stages, and so get to this stage, cast your thread off, and then simply varnish it, head cement, put it to the side to dry, and then you can come back to it. But I just find that the resins are they're just convenient. Certainly when you're demonstrating, actually. Once that's dry, next we're going to come in with our wing, and again I'm using some Ultra Select CDC. And have I got the right packet? Yeah, grey brown, that's right. So let me just I'll see if I can. So that's how it comes, and I don't know if you see it better on that one. It comes in packets, which is pretty easy to use. Now with this one, I mean the CDC is so thick that you can probably get away with 4 plumes. And it'll float, no bother. Just going to put that to the side. Now I've got it, it's pretty much all lined up for you as it comes out the packet. So I don't want to put it down like that, because that will cause a big, I want it on its side really. So just work it in your fingers until you get it where you want it, and you want it just over the length of the back of the hook. Now before I bring that over, I've just given my thread a little clockwise turn, and this just makes it a little bit stronger, and I've added a little bit of wax. I'm going to lay my wing down. I'm not quite happy with the length yet. That's about right. And then I'm going to pinch and loop, and then hold it into position. Just make sure everything's going to sit how you want it. Let's have a look at your side. Yeah, it's looking alright. Then once you're convinced it's nailed down, in with the snips, and you can remove that bulk. And that's not too bad. Okay, so with a March Brown, I have been using a hare's mask. So all I've done is from the top here, I've just pulled out some fibres. Now in the example one that I had in the vise before, I probably had far too much of this pulled out, but on this one got it just about sparser. And what I'm going to do next, if I can find it, is I'm going to put that into a little clip. Now, with normal dubbing, you don't really need this, but with this, I just need to put it into a clip. And again, the UTC thread is really easy to split, nice and thick, so there'll be no mistakes this time. And then with a clip, you can pop it in, and then I'll just spin that up. And that's looking a lot better than the first one I did earlier. It's far too thick and bushy, whereas this is just about right. Now you'll notice I've got quite a lot of spare going on here, and I'm going to use that to just tidy up this front bit a bit before lifting the wing, getting several good turns under the wing. You want it to cock up, and then a few turns in front, and that's looking not too bad. And I can come in again with my resin before, just get that red out the way. I don't want any red in it. You can trim that away. And then give it a little blast to finish off. And there you have a little March brown pattern. Again, size 10 down to about size 16, works really well. Hi Steve, I'm using a resin called Solaris Bone Dry, and it comes from Italy, I believe. Well, it comes from America actually, and they use it on surfboards, believe it or not. And just have a little rest for that. And they do this as a little sort of diversification, if you like. Now, you can get it here in the UK, but it's becoming quite hard. I think a few more people are looking to stock it, and of course the big take from it is that it's got that little brush, which makes it really easy to do small detailing with a UV resin. That's why I like it. I'll tell you what, Simon, I'm going to tie the moose mane one. Actually, it's one of my my preferred ones. As you say, do I have any preferences? And the moose mane certainly is one of my preferences, so I'll tie that one for you next. I don't think I've got much longer left, but I'll do that one next. It's a great. The thing about the moose mane is whether it's March brown, LDO, it's a generic sort of suggestive pattern that works really well. So I think the one you're meaning might be something along the lines of this. And is that the one you're maybe thinking about? If I can just try and make some space on this bench. Okay, I need that. Yeah, I've not got too much room to work with here, and I'm just trying to get the stuff that's relevant for this next pattern. Okay, so this is the one Simon was mentioning here, and if I can just lift the wing, you'll see there's a tiny little flash just in. If I show you the footprint, you've got that little bit of life-like flash in the bottom there, which I really like. In fact, this is one of my favourite early season patterns. It would be if it wasn't for the jingler, which is usually my opening gambit, this is my next fly that I would go to. So let's see. Generally, I've got a big office that I tie in, but and I do all my tying at work generally. But I've been sort of sent home, and I'm currently working off of this Black & Decker Workmate, which is not ideal really, but it seems to be working of a fashion. So I'm going to stick a Hanak H 330 barbless hooking device. It's on a medium wire, but when they say medium wire, it is quite light, and it's bronze. It's on a bronze hook, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in the vise at what might seem a funny angle, but what I want to do is just do a lot of work down this neck of the woods first. Okay, so again, I'm going to go back to the nano silk, and I'm going to add a little bit of super glue to the shank of the hook, and I've just noticed that I can't see a bloody thing. Old age comes to us all. So I've got a little bit of super glue on the shank there, and I'm just going to use my thread to spread it about a little bit, and then bring it down all the way around the bend, to the bottom there. Then I can come in and take that away. Now, so as Simon suggested, I've got this Moose Mane emerger, and actually I don't know if any of you are aware, but I've organised a little fly tying day on Sunday, and I've got Davy McPhail involved and Mac Flies. There's several guys been kind enough to join in, and we're going to be doing a fly tying show, and the fly I'm going to tie is this one. So you can just skip me if you're going to tune into that. So I'm just going to pick out 3 strands of moose mane. Now, it's a great material, it's a very robust material, and I want to get 3 strands. Now just bear with me while I pick through the ones I'd like to use. And you want to try and get 3 contrasting strands. I like to get a sort of really dark one and a really sort of white one, and then a tan one if I can. Okay, that one looks good. The thing I like about the moose mane is there's not 2 of them the same, and if I just show this up to near the eye, it'll be in focus. You see how fine the point is, and that's one of the things I like about it. So I've got 3 to simulate the tail. I'm going to line up the points just in my hand. Try and bring them together. And what I like to do with this initially is wet it, and it just keeps, he says it's misbehaving, it just keeps it all together, makes it easier to work with. And what I want to do, it's not behaving at all today, is I want to catch it in approximately a centimetre past where I've finished my thread on. just get a loose turn in there initially. Keep a hold of this stuff, you don't want to lose it. And then once I'm happy that's in place, I want to keep this, I want to try and keep it on top of the shank. So it's not the easiest thing to do, but it doesn't have to be particularly neat, just as long as you're keeping it on top of the shank. And the reason you want to keep it on top of the shank is when you bring your body up, it just makes it nice and even. One more turn of thread there, and I think that'll do me. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bend back the moose mane. Be very gentle, you don't want it snapping off. It doesn't make a big deal of difference, but you don't want it to snap off if you can help it. Then bring it all the way back down to where your tail is. Then in open turns, come back up a bit, and I'm just going to use my nano silk to create a little taper. Doesn't need to be big. And then I can grab my 3 strands like so, and that's going to create my body. If you've not got the strands married together, the first few turns coming around the bends, always the most challenging, but once you get round there, it's just much easier. And I know it'll be difficult to see on the camera, but it does give you the most exquisite body to a fly. It's a lovely looking thing. Then I'm going to catch with my nano silk my moose mane, and then I can get a few turns in front, and what have I done with my scissors? Come in and remove my waist. Okay, so far so good. The weekend meeting, Lindsay, is already, I take it you're not on Facebook, or you've probably seen it, but if you go onto my channel on Sunday morning at, in fact, give me 2 seconds, let me see if I can do this here. Here we go. I think that'll take you to the first video of the day, Lindsay, and then what you'll find is in the description there's a list of all the tyres and what time they're going to be on and what they're actually going to be tying. I hope that helps, mate. Okay, now I've got this to this stage, I'm just going to slightly change the position in the vise, because all the action is going to take place up the top here now. So for the little bit of glister you've seen in the initial fly, what I used for that was some Opal Mirage tinsel, and it's a nice shiny blingy sort of material, so I've got a little bit of that I've been working on. And the first thing I'm going to do, I've only got the large. I could really do with buying the small or the medium, but I haven't got it, so I'm just going to cut a small tag into the edge of the material so I can catch that on with my thread. Now I've started it well up the thorax so I can get a couple of turns there, but I'm going to come backwards a bit because there's going to be quite a lot going on with the front of the fly. So don't worry about the size of this at the moment. It will be disappearing under the wing and various other materials that are still to come into play. So I'll just pin that down. A couple of wraps there. And that's looking not too bad. Again, I'm going to come through it with some UV resin. It does add a little something to the body, just tidies it up. Not only that, when you cast it onto the river, it just helps sink the fly. Doesn't take a lot, and it's certainly not going to drag it down. And the next thing I've got to do is add in the underwing. Now what have I done with it? Oh, here we go. And it's just some more of the CDC feather. And but I only need a couple of plumes. So I've got two of the, again it's the brown grey. I prefer the natural, but very difficult to get a hold of at the moment. I'm just going to marry up the tips of that, pull that along together, and I want it just to be to the bend of the hook. That's perfect. And that's looking not too bad. Then I can come in with my snips and take that away. Now I've got a couple of different ways of doing this. So I've got what I've got here is called snowshoe. This one's been dyed olive, and I prefer it to be brown, but I've absolutely wrecked my brown one, and so I've only got olive. Now it's a lovely coarse, highly floatable material, and I'm just going to take a tiny little bit from the snowshoe. Now it's under fur, makes lovely dubbing actually, but I don't want that at the minute. I just want that tiny bit. As you can see, it's really spiky and great for imitating legs. So I'm going to just bring that on. I want to cloak it round the thorax area there. And once I've got that into place, that's given a lovely buggy impression of legs. Then I can come in, trim away what I don't want. And yeah, fairly happy with that. Okay, so next then, before I do anything else, I'm going to get a little wax onto my thread, and then I'm going to grab some coastal deer hair. Lovely stuff this, it's nice to work with, and it doesn't take much effort to get it stacked, which is a good thing. So again, I'm going to take, you need a lot less than you'd think actually, especially with the You've already got the CDC going on. You've got the snowshoe, which is highly buoyant. So I've taken about, I don't know, a centimetre, we'll say. And then I can comb out any of the materials that I don't need. Find my hair stacker in amongst the plethora of stuff that's now littering my dining room, and give it a little tap. Now, once you've tapped it in, your tips should be lined up nice and neatly. And just clear out any dead ends with your fingertips. Now you want to line that up, and it's got to come slightly past the CDC. And make sure you've got your measurement right. And then just off camera, I'm just cutting this over my little waste bin. And then I can come in with a pinching loop, nice and gentle initially, come through the cut ends, and then once you start getting it into place, you can clamp down on it. Now again, this is an emerging pattern, so get a hold of your deer hair, just break so that it sits nice and flat on the water for you. Again, if you were of a mind to, you could add a sighter in at this point, but I'm not going to bother with that. And what I've got to finish this one off is some, again, it's Trout Stalker's dubbing. Yeah, I do like this stuff. It's, you know, it's a great great product. And this one's the Highland Peat. And again, I've just taken a small pinch out, and I'll give you the opportunity to laugh at me while I try and split the thread again. So flatten that out. Yeah. I've just had to do it all night to get it right. And once the Highland Peat goes in, and what the Highland Peat's it's a blend of a darker blend, I suppose, but it's got, I say darker, it's got bright blues, yellows, pinks. It's just lovely, a really lovely dubbing. So we'll get that spun up, and while that's doing its thing, again, I'm going to take a small bit of super glue onto my dubbing needle. Just put the lid on. And this just keeps the fly together nice and tight. Just going to pull out some of the dubbing so that I get a nice thin rope, and then each turn I'm going to bring back until I reach the front of my hook. Now, because I've used the super glue, there's no requirement to add any more Solaris. I can then come in with my whip finish and finish the fly. And this is, as I said, if I was to put them into any kind of order, the first fly of the evening I tied would certainly be my opening gambit on the Avon, the Jingler, big beast of a fly, and then if that wasn't getting any attention, this would be my next port of call. And if we can just show you the profile, so what you see is the buggy sort of legs, you've got the half pronounced tail there, and that can often bring fish up from anywhere. And I think that's about me for the evening, folks. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to stay on for a minute or so. Is there any more for any more? Okay, right, well, without further ado, gents, I think I'll say good night to you. I hope you stay safe, and I hope we all get out fishing come April. We'll just need to keep our fingers crossed. You're very welcome, guys. Thanks for tuning in, I appreciate it.